What's up, everybody? One Fun Guy podcast in the studio. As you can see, unfortunately, I am by myself tonight. Letitia got stuck downtown. She was having some car issues. So we, unfortunately, are going to have to reschedule again. No big deal. Things like this happen. But I do have some things that I wanted to discuss on my podcast, and that is going to be about my future podcast and guests that I have lined up. So next week is going to be unique because I don't know if I'm going to podcast from there or if I'm just going to take a bunch of pictures and post. But I am going to Wind Up Chicago. It is a watch event that I was invited to by Greg, who was a guest 2 podcasts ago, Greg the Watchman. And I'm super excited to be, a part of this now. I signed up, I registered, so I'm going to be going to Wind Up Chicago. So I don't know if I'm going to podcast from there. I don't know how it's going to be with volume, background noise, but I am going to attempt to at least go live from there and then create a podcast as well. So I don't know what is going to transpire after that. Now, I do have a few guests lined up, but I need to iron out the dates and times before I go and announce it. One of them is going to be Amanda. She is a TikTok influencer. She has a huge following, and I'm super excited to have her on. Again, logistically, it's just difficult to fill in the gaps. Obviously, between her live shows on TikTok, her family obligations, and things like that, it's difficult to set aside time to do a podcast. So I understand that. And when things like tonight happen, I still had planned on going live at 7:30. So with or without a guest, I need to keep my weekly podcast going. So I'm going to officially count this as a podcast. Well, because I can, right? It's my show. But I just want to make things relevant for the future and what I'm trying to do. So obviously with Letitia, I had a bunch of questions lined up. She was going to join me in studio. It's just impossible for her to get here tonight. So the show must go on, as they say. So I'm going to do a podcast tonight. I don't know what exactly to talk about. I'm just kind of winging it. I just wanted to give some insight of what's coming up next week and then the week after with Amanda. So that's my goal for the next 2 weeks, is to do Wind Up Chicago and then have Amanda on. Obviously, I will have to reschedule with Letitia. There's some other people that I have in the pipeline that I just need to logistically figure out days and times, which, like I said, is difficult to do when somebody is in a band, hint, hint, or has a live schedule or can't make it on a specific day and time when I'm available. So working through and navigating is, definitely an issue that I'm having, but it's nothing that I can't overcome. It's not a big deal. I have, the guest lined up, and they will happen. So moving forward on tonight, what I was going to try to attempt to do was give some insight about how I vet my guests for podcasts. I've had a couple people message me and say, listen, you should do this, this, and this. And while it's nice to get input from the people that watch my show, which I greatly appreciate in all honesty, how the process works for me is if I find somebody via social media, here on Facebook, on any one of the other platforms that I use, and I reach out to them and ask them if they want to be a guest on my show or they know anybody who wants to be a guest on my show. If they send me that person's info, I reach out to them and I say, hey, this person told me you would make a good guest. Would you be interested in doing a podcast? If they say yes, what I do is I set up a day and time where I can talk to them via StreamYard or Zoom, and I get insight on what they want to talk about. I said, hey, is anything off topic? Is there anything you don't want to discuss? Is there anything personal that I should stay away from? So I asked the general questions. Most people are like, no, I'm an open book. So I'll give you an example with Kaji, right? Kaji was the musician I had on, the guitarist I had on my last podcast. He said, I don't mind talking about the equipment I use. He goes, but I don't want to show you my setup, and I don't want to show you how I tune my stuff because that's special to me. It's my unique sound and it's the way that I do it, and nobody else is doing what I'm doing. So, of course, it's like a magician, right? They're not going to reveal their secrets, but they'll talk about what they do. So that's how the process works. So unfortunately, when I ask people about what is important to them, the number one answer I get is social media presence, building a community, gaining followers, and possibly monetizing what they're doing so that they can put the money back into what they're trying to do on their show, whether it's buy equipment, whether it's, get followers to support them monetarily, to get, the platforms to pay them back. So that's why I spend an overwhelming amount of time talking about the importance of social media and the importance of networking, because that's what my guests want to talk about. They want to grow their groups, they want to grow their numbers just like I do, right? I want to get many, many followers on my YouTube channel, and I don't make it a secret. I want to do that. I would love to have 500 subscribers on my YouTube channel, then go to 1,000. And then that way, if I did happen to monetize it, any money that comes in, I would put directly back into my podcast, buying better equipment, buying, better studio space, buying, the things that are necessary to run a successful podcast, which I already have a great space. I have a very good setup, but it could always be better, right? I could buy more high end equipment. I can do more things. So if I were to ever gain money from this, it would go directly back into what I'm doing. So that is how I interpret what my guests want to talk about. I just ask them, hey, what is important to you? What do you want to talk about on the show? Now, it depends on what they have going on in their life, which is what I get. But the overwhelming response of most people is, I want to improve my social media, I want to grow my following, and I want to gain more subscribers, which is what we all want to do. That's why we're doing what we do. That's why we put ourselves out there. That's why we do a weekly show. That's why we do a bi-weekly show. That's why we go live all the time. That's why we put stuff out on social media. It's not because we're just trying to flood, Facebook with what we're doing. It's for a purpose. At least my stuff is for a purpose. I put things out to promote my podcast, to get eyes on my YouTube channel and on my TikTok and on my Instagram. And it's not a secret. I've said that 1,000 times on all the videos I post. So for me, when I have a podcast and I set up my guest, it's what they want to talk about, what their comfort level is, how deep they want to go. So Sheena was a perfect example, right? She was like, I'll talk about my cancer, I'll talk about my recovery, I'll talk about my business, I'll talk about the downtime of COVID, moving shops. She was an open book, and I appreciated that deeply, because not many people want to talk about that. But those are questions that I ask them before we come on live. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. I don't want to make people talk about what they don't want to talk about. I want this to be a productive podcast where I promote the positivity and the positive stuff they have going on in their lives. And so I ask those questions before we ever come on and do a podcast live. Is there anything that's off the table that you don't want to talk about? Most people are honest and they say no, but some people say yes. So it doesn't bother me. I want to put out the best possible podcast that I can to make it the most enjoyable for my studio audience, right? That's why I'm here. So my goal is to make other people stand out. The guests that I have, I want people to see what's important to them, how they're growing, how they're learning, how they're moving forward. And that's why I like to use the term recycle, because I like to check in on my guests down the road. Hey, let's set up another podcast for another 3 or 4 months. Tell us what you have going on. How have you grown from the time we first talked till now? Did you gain those followers? Did you get those subscribers? Did you move in a forward direction? And that's what I want to do. I want to promote positivity on my podcast. I want it to be a timeline of where I've been and where I want to go, and my guest along the way the same way. I bring them into my world to show you all what they have to offer and what they have to say. And I try to find the most positive people that I can, people with a great message, people that have entertaining stories, and people that are willing to come on and do a podcast, because there's a lot of people that I've asked that just say, hey, it's not my thing. I'd love to do it, but I'm not ready to do it yet. So I leave the door open. I say, okay, when you're ready, hit me up. If it's 4 months, if it's 5 months, if it's a year, and you feel more comfortable to go live and do a podcast with me, awesome. Hop on, let's do it. So that's kind of how I get myself out there. That's kind of how I put my, podcast in the world. And that's how I portray myself to the universe. So I try the best I can to do that. Now, I post everything that I do on here and on TikTok on my YouTube channel, right? That's where I want this podcast to live and grow and breed, and do everything else is on YouTube, right? Nothing wrong with Facebook, nothing wrong with Instagram, nothing wrong with TikTok and the other platforms, but YouTube is where I want to be. There's no secret. I've said that 1,000 times. The more YouTube subscribers I get, the more content I can put out, the more that YouTube says, hey, we like what you're doing. We're going to put your stuff into the world. And that's what I want to do. So I always ask you guys, right? Can you please subscribe to my YouTube channel? Can you give me a thumbs up, and can you share the video? At the very minimum, if you just subscribe, it boosts my numbers. So that's what I'd appreciate, right? It's free. If you have a YouTube account, just subscribe. It takes literally 10 seconds to find me. I'm One Fun Guy Podcast. Just hit the subscribe button, and that's it. That's all I ask for. If you want to do the other stuff, right, hit the bell, subscribe, or I'm sorry, hit the bell, like, follow, share, all the other stuff. Awesome. But at the very minimum, if you just subscribe, that helps me out a lot. So that's how I find my guests. That's kind of how I vet my guests, and that's kind of how I interact with my guests. So with all that being said, I always put it out there into the universe. If you are watching this and you want to be a guest on my podcast, shoot me a message here on Facebook, or send me an email at onefunguypodcast at gmail.com, and I will get you involved in what I'm doing and see if it's a good fit for you, because it's generally a good fit for me. I put it out there, right? So I'm asking you, if you want to be a guest, or if you know anybody who would like to be a guest on my podcast, please reach out to me. And that's kind of how I've networked myself in this very unique world of having people on my show to have a conversation with them for an hour. And that's generally what I try to do. So I want to make it the most fun hour I can make it. I want to get the most information out. I want to give the most insightful interviews in conversations that I can get. That's what I want to do. And that's kind of what my podcast is like. And I said it before, I'm wearing his hat. Sean Ryan is kind of my influence in the podcast world. His setup is awesome. His guests are awesome. And how he interacts with them is awesome. And that's what I emulate. I'm not stealing his stuff. I'm not trying to be him, but he is the guy that I kind of gravitate to say, I like his setup. I like his conversation style. I like his guest, and I like how he interacts with people. So again, he's my guy that I follow, and that I presume that I would one day want to be like. There are many, many great podcasters out there. I've been on a few of their shows. A few of them have been on my shows, but it's a learning experience for me. My goal in this is to grow, to learn from interactions with my guests, to know what questions I want to ask, to know how I want the conversation to flow, and then to get input from you guys, right? Send me a text message, shoot me a message, say, hey, I think it would be better if you did this, this, and this, or if you can incorporate this, this, and this, or you should try to do this, this, and this. I take note of everything, guys. I try to do that as much as I can. I try to incorporate what you guys are saying to be a better podcaster, and to take what you guys have to offer me. A lot of you have very unique backgrounds and very unique circumstances that you've gone through that say, hey, listen, if you were to talk to this person about this instead of this, it would have been better. Okay, well, when I have them back on my show, I will do that. I will ask them those questions, and I will talk about that. So that's generally how I go about it. And I try to make it the most insightful and the most productive podcast that I can make it. And I do my best to do it once a week. Unfortunately, circumstances like this just happen, right? Like I said, Letitia called and said, hey, I'm not going to be able to make it today. I said, okay, we'll reschedule. there's nothing I can do that's out of my control. I will have her on. She popped on yesterday. The goal was to have her in the studio today. I was not home yesterday. I was remote. And she was like, I'd rather do it with you just because of the energy we have together. We have, when we talk, we laugh, we get excited. So she's like, I want to feel that in the studio with you. That way our conversation would be, I'm like, awesome. Then we'll just make it for tomorrow because it was supposed to be last night. So I, unfortunately, try to put out as much as I can to give everybody advance notice. And then today, those circumstances happen. Things in life happen, guys. There's not much I can do or say about that. You've all been in those situations like myself where you plan on doing something that just doesn't happen. So I, again, just want to make my podcast be part of the algorithm that is putting out a podcast once a week. So that's what I'm doing. I'm in here, in my studio talking to you guys alone. That wasn't the plan. That's not what I wanted to have happen, but circumstances dictated otherwise. So I do my best to come on and say stuff that's meaningful to me. Now, if you guys see these pictures behind me right here, all lined up, my cousin Mickey was a Navy fighter pilot, and he is one of the people that I want to have on my show. So if you are watching this now, I want you guys to ask me questions that I would ask a naval aviator, right? So we've all seen the movie Top Gun, and we've all probably seen Top Gun Maverick, right? That's a movie. My cousin Michael lived that. That's his pilot. That's him in the picture right here, the white outfit. I don't know if you guys could see. I'm trying to point. But second picture down, all the way bottom left, that's him in his naval uniform. And I want him to be a guest on my show. I've reached out to him, and we're trying to logistically plan that. But I think I want that one to be more interactive with my guest, right? What would you ask a Navy fighter pilot? Somebody who's been in aerial combat and has flown numerous successful missions in an F-14 fighter jet. What would you want to know? Because I know what I'd want to know, but I kind of want to make it more interactive to my guest. What would you guys want to see on the show? What do you want me to ask him? Anything from landing on an aircraft carrier at night to how do you get in and out of a dogfight alive, right? Those are questions that I would ask, right? How do you maneuver an F-14 to do it? Like I said, we've all seen the movie Top Gun. Most of us have. Everybody says that those moves in the movie were anything that a naval pilot could do. So that was not trickery, that was not any pilot was able to do what he was able to do in the movies, the first and the second one. And pilots have gone on record and said that that's just part of our training combat. That's what we do daily. So I want to make it more interactive when I get my cousin Mickey on and say, hey, these are the questions that the audience wants to ask, and I will do that through you guys. I think that would be fun. I want to try it. And the reason I want to do that is because, again, Sean Ryan did that a couple weeks ago, and I was like, so again, I'm not stealing his ideas, but I thought it was interesting to see what his fans wanted to ask certain people on the show. So what would you want to ask a Navy fighter pilot? That's my question to you guys. And when I have Mickey on, I want it to be interactive with all of you guys through him. He is a fantastic human being, and his stories are a mile long of what he's been able to accomplish in and outside of the military. He had a very successful career as a pilot, and he retired from the Navy and went in to do many other things, include write a children's book. But he is one of the people that I want to be more interactive with when I have him on, as because, what would you ask a pilot? What would you ask a fighter pilot? Because like I said, I know what I want to know, but I want to know what you guys would ask, just to see if our minds are in the same spot, if we think the same way, if the patterns line up. So I think that would be fun. So I am reaching out to him, and I'm going to set him up as to be a guest, and that is going to be awesome. And again, from my childhood, I mean, how many people get to say that they have a family member that gets to do that, right? And so I'm lucky. I'm one of them. When I was a kid, he sent me all his patches, all his stickers, from the VF 171. He was part of the Tomcat. Puking Dogs was a squadron. So that was awesome. And that was, as a kid, I was like, this is great. Like, and now fast forward 30 years, I get to have him on my show and talk about, everything that he was able to do in the military. So that is another piece of the puzzle that I want to incorporate into my lives when I get somebody like that on. So again, I have a bunch of things happening in the pipeline. I have a lot more show to come. Again, this unfortunate is just another, road bump that I have to drive over. Not having a guest be able to do a podcast when you're expecting it, but again, it's nobody's fault. Circumstances happen, life happens, things get in the way, and rescheduling is a necessity. So that's what I'm going to do. So Letitia's not, she doesn't miss her spot. She just gets to come on a different time. So I just wanted to keep the weekly podcast going. So I figured I would hop on, see who is on tonight, chat with you guys, see what's out there, see, what is going on. And then another thing I'm going to try to do real quick while I'm doing this is when I go live on Facebook, it's hard for me to see any messages that are happening when I'm live. I just don't really want to see what's going on. It's just more difficult for me to do that because unfortunately, when I'm live and I'm trying to read the comments, I don't necessarily see them on the screen when I am here on StreamYard. When I get to see them on Facebook as they're happening, that's kind of what I want to do. So, like, I don't get to see the comments as they're coming through. So, if you do make a comment, I can't see it, but I want it to be interactive with you guys again. So, I'm going to try and make it a point to read the comments as I'm doing this and try to share them into different groups and the things that I'm doing, just so I could get people on and get a better idea of what's happening with my stuff. So this is going to be kind of a practice run for me, which is really kind of cool because I don't really get a chance to do this as much when I'm on. I go live and I start my podcast and I try to do my best just to jump into things and not waste time. So this is going to be kind of a cool little trial and error because I'm going to see if I can share this out into the groups that I'm in to see if anybody can or can't read these comments. And if you can, please drop them so I can see them and kind of go from there, because that's what I'm trying to do is get my analytics up and try to, be a better podcast experience for you guys as well. I enjoy doing this just as much, hopefully, as you guys enjoy listening to it. So for me, it's a kind of a good practice is I can get into this by myself and not have to worry about it because I don't have a person with me or on the other side that I'm focused on. It's just me tonight. So I am definitely trying to share into the other groups right now is what I'm doing. And I'm trying to see if I cannot read your messages as we're here live in the studio, which is cool. Like I said, it's practice for me. So I'm going to use this time appropriately and not waste it. So for me, this is a very, very unique experience because it's one of the first times since I've done my podcast that I actually get to try it live to see what is happening. So it's fun for me. This is kind of neat. I'm really, happy that I was able to do this and see what happens in this. There are a lot of podcast groups that I am a part of, guys. So I am trying to get this out to every one of them to see if anybody will interact with me while I'm live, because I normally don't get to do this. Like I said, when I go live with somebody and they're in the studio, we go live and we just start talking. I do my introduction about the clubhouse always, sponsoring my programs, which I'm very grateful to have that happen. It's a unique situation that I'm in, but the business that my wife owns sponsors my shows. And so I get to wear the cool stuff. So when that happens, that's usually how I start my show. But I don't get a chance to really interact with you guys as much when I'm live because I don't see the comments on StreamYard. I see them later when I upload the video to YouTube. I see them all lined up and see how they are. And then I get to see who shares. I get to see who's watching. I get to see who commented. And everything else. So I don't usually get a chance to do that when I'm live. So it's kind of nice to see myself on another screen as I'm live with you guys right now. So it's very entertaining to me. So that's kind of cool the way that this is happening. So I can actually comment back, and post this as well and see what's on there. So it's a unique experience for me as well to be interactive because generally I don't do that. When I have a guest on the show, I am focused 100% on them and the conversation we're having. I don't have time to go through and look and scroll and share and do that. I hope you guys do when you're watching, right? I really kind of hope that that is, you know, what you guys are doing to help me out. If you share the show, if you like and you comment and you do all the stuff, that really helps me out in this world, and then gets everybody else over to my YouTube channel, that is out there, that I really, you know, I'm hoping that you guys can subscribe to. I'm always posting that, right? That's my link. If you go to YouTube, I'm One Fun Guy Podcast, I pop up. That's basically where you guys can find me. That's kind of where I want to live when I do it. So when I do get that, when I get asked questions about my podcast, that's generally what I get asked. How do I find my guests? What do I, you know, want to talk about, and what do I want to promote for them? And my answer is I want to talk about whatever they want to talk about, whatever they have going on in their lives at the current moment, whether it's something they're starting, whether it's something they want to start, whether it's growing, whether it's, you know, whatever they want to talk about is where I put the direction of my video in, which is fun for me because it's unique, and I get to meet people from all walks of life and all experiences. Just like when I had Justice on, he started a new business venture with Roll 'em Up Taquitos. I was like super, you know, happy that he was able to do that. But when I asked him, I was like, hey, can you share some insight into creating your own business from a brick and mortar standpoint and going into restaurant management, which he says he had never done before? He was like, yeah, I'd love to. So again, that's a unique experience for me because I don't know that many restaurant owners, and I definitely don't know that many people that started their own business in a brick and mortar that were having to deal with all the stuff that happens when you open up a business, right? All the stuff that you have to go through with the city, right? Getting different uh inspectors coming in, getting different code information, you know, making sure that everything is to spec. That, you know, it was a unique thing to talk to him about. So I was super happy, and I'm super proud of him, right? I'm you know, happy that he was able to do that, and that we were able, you know, to talk about that. The same with Greg, right? We talked watches mainly, but what I'd like to do with Greg is say, hey, what do you carry when you're not at work? What is in your pocket, right? What do you have on you? And then I also want to talk to him about the experience that he had with his wife, which was a terrible tragedy and a terrible loss. And I don't want to spill the beans on that. But if you were to Google Greg the Watchman, and see any one of his interviews that he had done previously, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I want him to share that experience with me that's unique. So when I see him at Windup, we will talk, and then we'll figure out a date and time that he can come back on and talk about those kind of things. I also am in the works of talking with a couple of people that have been prior guests on my show. James is one of them. Paranoia Threat is another one, and now Sheena is another one. I want to do a podcast about horror movies, and what we like in the genre, what we like as far as characters, what we grew up with, what we like to watch, what got us into it, and just kind of talk the hour about horror movies. Obviously, you guys know, if you've watched me, I'm a huge movie fan, but I love horror movies. So I thought that would be really kind of cool to kind of do a group type podcast where I have 3 or 4 different people on besides myself, and we talk about that. And then maybe down the road, I'll have 3 or 4 different people talk about it, and that we can share our experiences and see if anything overlaps. And, you know, because not everybody likes the same things, right? We all have different tastes, we all have different ideas, we all have different, you know, ideology of what we think is good in terms of movies in general, but specifically horror movies. You know, because I like the suspense a lot, but I also like the blood and guts, right? So, you know, we like to, you know, talk about those experiences that we've had with that kind of genre, because that's the one genre of movies that kind of strike the nerve with everybody, right? Whether you believe in the spirit life, whether you believe in the afterlife, whether you believe in demons, whether you believe in possession, whether you believe in ghosts, it's a whole nother subgenre outside of movies, what you believe personally. If you believe in ghosts, if you believe in all that kind of stuff, then it kind of hits more home as to what you like and what you think is out there, right? So that's a unique, you know, characteristic of those kind of movies versus comedies and actions, because we've all been in funny situations ourselves, but like, it's a belief outside of the movie, right? And that's kind of what scares people, or, you know, intensifies the experience if they believe in that kind of stuff. So it's a unique experience, and I just want to, you know, bring that to the world, and have that, you know, be a part of what I'm doing. So with that being said, guys, I'm just about at the half an hour mark. which is kind of unique because I didn't think I would be able to go this long, but I have. So again, I appreciate you guys all supporting me, all watching me, subscribing to my YouTube channel, following me on TikTok, following me on Instagram, sharing all my stuff here, liking me, befriending me, messaging me, sending me all the stuff. I appreciate it, guys. I love all of the support that I'm getting from you. I really love the interaction between you guys. Thank you all for being fans. Thank you all for being friends. Now, thank you all for being family because you're all part of the One Fun Guy podcast family. So, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It means the world to me that I'm able to do this and that I'm able to continue on with this experience. So, thank you all for everything. I appreciate it. If you can, please, please, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Again, it's One Fun Guy podcast. That's where I want to grow. That's where I want my channel to live. That's where this video will be. That's where the other videos will be. They will all be linked to my YouTube channel. So please, if you can, if you're not watching this live, if you catch it on the replay or you catch it at another time, please, if you can, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you could have a friend subscribe, if you can put it out there that I'm doing this, whether you know me personally or you don't, if you come across my stuff, please just subscribe. It really helps me out a lot. If you could do that, guys, I'd appreciate it. But until next time, I am the One Fun Guy podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for following. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for everything. It means the world to me. So from me here in the studio to all of you, thank you. I appreciate it. And I love you all. I'll see you guys on the next time. And we will continue the One Fun Guy podcast from here into the future. So thank you all. Have a good night. Have a good weekend. And I will see you next week.